views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Okay, welcome to today's Verdict, the live and interactive show that brings you your rights and options. I'm your trial attorney and host, David Lesch. We have a very big show today. We have two legislators on, two state senators. We have Zellnor Myrie on, as well as Alessandra Biaggi. Both are going to be talking about voting, how important it is to get out there, the problems at the polling sites. We're also going to be talking about the eviction moratorium and tenants and the problems that they're facing from possible landlords who want to have them evicted. Also, it's a law show. We have two great attorneys on. Dan Cassidy, given the honor of being the first trial attorney to get back into the courtroom in Bronx County. He's going to walk us through it. And we have Janette Cortes-Gomez will also be on, family court attorney, who will discuss the domestic issues that are facing many New Yorkers and what they can do and how they can walk through family court and hopefully get out of a very bad situation. As you can see, we have much to get to. All right, so stay tuned, stay with us. Today's verdict starts right now. A friend to the show, State Senator Alessandra Biaggi is here, and it is, of course, a very important time. It's voting time. Alessandra, how are you doing today?
I am doing probably just as well as all of my fellow New Yorkers, which is a little bit nervous, but also very much optimistic about the election that we're in right now. Early voting started on Saturday in New York, which I'm sure everybody knows. And the lines have been very long. And so we've been dealing with a lot of operational issues as it relates to the boards of elections that have led us to really, I think, be thoughtful about how we can make elections run more smoothly in the state of New York. You know, the long lines are a sign of voter suppression, but we can get to that later. So what it signals to me is that I am hopeful, and also I am being thoughtful about how we can make things better. So I think overall, I would say we're doing quite well.
So you don't think it's really a mechanical issue, or it's more of people aren't being moved along fast enough, whether that is purposeful? What's going on? Because as I mentioned to you before we got on air, in my site here in Wagner on the Upper East Side, it's a 5-hour wait.
Right.
What is going on here?
So what I think is going on is twofold. Number one, we have long lines because we don't have as many early voting sites as we would on election day. On election day, we have voting locations that probably are 5 times the number of early voting sites that we have. So that's number one. Number two, we only have in each early voting site a few machines. What am I talking about? What are these machines? The sign-in machine that you have to go and sign into when you get to the early voting site, as well as the printers that are printing the ballots, which are, of course, printing machines. We don't have sites with a lot of those machines. And so I'll just give you an example. In New Rochelle and Mount Vernon, which I think is in the process of being changed, there were only 2 machines, which if you have these sites for hundreds of thousands of people across the entire county, obviously 2 machines is not enough, and that's leading to the long lines. Also, the last thing I'll say that is leading to this, because this is a more structural issue, is that we have not, as a state, fully invested, have used our revenue to fund the boards of elections. And so what we see is a shortage of workers. We see a shortage of machines across the board. And that is part of why the process is not running as smoothly as it could.
Well, we still have some time, obviously, till Tuesday. Does there seem to be an incentive at this point? Oh, well, you know, it's not worth my time. 3-4 hours, I have to work. I have a job, I have kids, listen, I have a 10-year-old here, you know, I'm doing virtual schooling now, I can't leave right now.
Right.
Are people overcoming this, is what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, I think that people are biting the bullet, which sounds almost ridiculous to say. They're standing in line for the hours that it takes to actually vote, or they're trying to get to the polls earlier. I'll give you an example. For early voting poll sites that are open at 8 a.m., we're seeing people line up starting at 5 a.m. For early voting sites that are open at noon, we're seeing people start lining up at 9 or 8 a.m. So they're trying to get there earlier, but think about that. Even if you're one of the first people in line, to have to get to an early voting site 3 or 4 hours in advance is really not okay, and it's inconvenient for almost every single person. So what happened yesterday was the Board of Elections in the city, as well as in Westchester County, because I represent both counties, extended their early voting hours to make them longer so that people could actually come later in the day. So until 9 o'clock versus 7 o'clock, which has helped a little bit. And I'll just say I voted yesterday. I didn't vote at the place I usually vote at. I voted in Yonkers, one of their public libraries, and we got there. The wait was about 35 minutes. That's not long.
That's not bad at all.
No, it's not. And we got there around 8:10, and it closed at 9. And we were probably some of the last people to arrive. And we voted. It was quick, and the line moved much faster. So I think that it depends where you go, but I'll tell you right now, we didn't start our journey to vote and just went right to that library. We went to 3 other locations before we went there, because we saw the line snaking around the block, and we said, well, this line is very long. There's no way that we're going to stay here.
Well, let me ask you, Senator, let me ask something. On the other side, is there an excitement of a change coming away? You know, the country, the state. It's a big deal here. I mean, we're just galvanized. Tell me what you're feeling. Don't get too emotional, but tell me what you're feeling.
I know. I feel emotional because so much of what we have been fighting for 3.5 years is finally culminating, right? Like, it feels like the World Series of voting in such an exciting way. And so what I'm seeing is, yes, people are in line and they're not happy about being in line, but once they are done voting, they are like exuberant, and you can just see it. I mean, there was a few people who walked out ahead of us yesterday who had screamed. I mean, people are very excited to vote. So on the one hand, we don't want long lines. On the other hand, I'm just going to tell you that we have never seen voting like this before at this level so early. That is so promising, and that makes me feel optimistic. So all of the things that you could, have your mind go down that lane of parade of horribles is really stopped for me by the fact that there are people who are in line, excited. We're seeing also people are making it fun, right? They are, handing out food. They are playing music for others. I mean, there is a camaraderie around it, and it's right inside of and very much aligned with the New York spirit, which is really good, because to anybody who would say that New York is dead or it's never coming back, very much the opposite is happening. It is so much alive.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Perfectly well put. Senator, please come back whenever you can, see how you're doing, and hopefully we'll talk about what's happening and what's going to happen. We'll see next Tuesday. All right.
Look forward to it.
All right. We'll be back with more Today's Verdict. Stay with us right after this. We are very happy to have with us a New York State Senator from the 20th District, Zellnor Myrie. Zellnor, how are you doing today?
Good to be with you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Listen, let's get right down to it. Your constituents, a lot of people are suffering. They're in their homes. Landlords want them out. They're not paying rent because they don't have any money, because they're not making any money. It's been a very difficult time. Tell me what you're hearing from your constituents.
This has been an incredibly difficult time for a lot of the tenants in my district for all of the reasons that you just outlined. We are dealing with an unprecedented pandemic. We don't know when the end of that is going to happen. The economic loss has been monumental, and people are really struggling with the basic necessities of life. How do you put food on the table? How do you keep a roof over your head? So a lot of people have been reaching out saying, I'm being threatened about being evicted and I don't have any choice. What can I do to help protect myself?
So what do you tell them? What is the current status of the law? What, has it been extended? Give us a little history if you could.
Yeah, so when this pandemic first started, the governor issued a number of executive orders. The courts followed through on those executive orders, tried to give some regulations that said, hey, everyone, let's put a pause on the actions that happen in the court. Let's try to keep people in their homes because we don't know what the nature of this pandemic is going to be. As things have prolonged, there have been more executive orders and more quote unquote eviction moratoriums put out there by both the state and the federal government. The problem is they're all confusing and they all don't cover everything. And so if you're a tenant that is just trying to figure out how am I going to stay in my house, you don't know where to look, what information to get, and we're hoping to help people and help guide them in that process.
You know, way back when I was a court attorney and I worked with a Supreme Court judge, there was a time that she was actually sitting in a landlord-tenant court, and we were dealing with illegal lockouts. Are you hearing about that? Landlords who are putting, you know, a padlock on, and all of a sudden they come back home and there's no way to get in.
Yeah, so we've seen a number of actions in my district where the landlord has changed the locks or has threatened to change the locks, and a bunch of tenants show up. They show up on the stoop or they show up in the lobby of the building and say, we're not going to have this and we're not going to allow for it. And so this has been, you know, understandably a tough time for everyone, and everyone is trying to get the resources they need to pay their bills, but you have to do so within the confines of the law. And we're hoping that landlords will continue to follow the law as people are struggling.
Listen, let's put on another hat for a second. I mean, landlords are people too, right? And they have bills, whether it's mortgages, Con Edison. What are we doing? Is there anything that could be done to help, and especially the commercial landlords? What can we possibly do for them? Is there anything really?
You know, David, it's a great point. You talk about what I hear from my constituents. I have constituents that are small property owners who get their income from their tenants who don't have the resources. And what I've heard from them is, look, I'm trying to negotiate with my tenants. I know times are hard, but I also have bills to pay. So let's talk through a plan that can work. What I believe we need writ large is a relief plan that helps our small property owners with their mortgages and with their bills and with all sorts of other property maintenance. We're not going to be able to get that unless we get help from the federal government. Absent federal intervention, we won't be able to provide the relief for our property owners that we need. And so I'm going to be advocating for that. A lot of that will depend on you know, how the elections turn out, but I'm looking forward to advocating for our small property owners as well.
Zellnor, shifting gears for a second, and just COVID generally, and the uptick in new cases. What is happening in your district? What's going on?
You know, so we have, I think, fortunately avoided some of the designations, the red, yellow zones. You know, even that can be confusing, but we are right at the precipice here in central Brooklyn. And we were one of the epicenters of the COVID-19 crisis at the height of the pandemic. And we're hoping that that doesn't happen again. I have 3 hospitals in my district, and a lot of essential workers that not only work in this district, but live here as well. And for their sake and for the safety of the community, we're really hoping that people abide by the regulations, that we watch how we're reopening so that we don't, you know, fall victim to a second wave.
Zellnor, final tips, you know, either constituents, just your viewers are watching right now, and, you know, maybe they need a little comfort or something from the legislators. What would you tell them during the whole pandemic at this point?
This is a tough period. This is a tough period for all of us. And COVID fatigue is a real thing. Having to take safety precautions all the time is a real thing. Mental health is a real thing. And this is something that really I don't think we talk about enough. To the extent that you can get help, that you can talk about what's going on with you, that's really going to help. And know that you are not alone. All of us, including us in the legislature, your leaders, we're going through it with you as well. But I believe that we can get through it as a collective. And so don't give up, and please get the help you need.
Well, Zellnor, well put. And we really want to thank you for stopping by. It's the first time you've been on, and we hope to have you again.
It was great to be here, and look forward to being here again.
Wonderful. All right, we'll be back with more Today's Verdict. Stay with us right after this. All right, we are back with Janette Cortes-Gomez, our family law expert. Janette, first of all, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you. It's dreary, but otherwise well.
I hear more often from our viewers that their biggest issues and the problems that they're having are domestic issues as a result of having to stay inside their homes or their apartments and not being able to leave given the pandemic. And I'm sure many have sought your advice as to what to do with respect to family court, and even if you can help them. What has your experience been with respect to the domestic issues and COVID?
So they fall into three categories. You have the ones who are afraid to take action against their abuser because they're in the same house, they're stuck in the same house, neither one of them have an alternative place to go, so what do I do? We have the ones who, I need a divorce, and this is the time. And then we have the ones who have pending cases, and what do I do? There is now a violation. So with regards to the more serious ones, the ones who are stuck in the home with their abuser, in the beginning of the pandemic, no one really knew what to do, but there have been guidance, thankfully. Safe Horizon has been a great help. What they do is they speak directly to litigants, in particular when they're unrepresented, so that they can begin the process. They can contact an attorney that very day to assist in drafting the petition, so that when they confront the judge or appear for a judge on that very day, they have a very strong case against their abuser.
Have the hearings been held in person? Are they virtual hearings? How does that work?
Everything is virtual. Obviously, the courts are physically still closed, at least the family courts. I know in Civil and Supreme they're beginning to open up, but family courts are still closed, at least in the 5 boroughs. In Suffolk County, they are starting to allow in-person hearings. I believe I have one scheduled for the middle of November, so we'll see how that goes. But yes, it's all done virtual through Skype for business, but now they're turning over to a new system called Teams.
So how does that work in terms of just cross-examining, either somebody who is accused of the abuse? How does that really come out easily, or is it difficult as a family law practitioner?
Well, it's difficult all around because it's virtual. So, for example, if either one of the parties, attorneys or the court, has a technical difficulty, there it goes. We have to wait, we have to pause, and you could be in the middle of cross-examination and it'll throw you off. But it has been going. The cases I've had actually have settled where there's no admissions. They just say, okay, we'll have an order of protection. The divorces are a different issue. With those, we've been filing, but they haven't really been processed. So we're just waiting to hear back.
So what happens with child custody issues? Because that is always intertwined many times with the divorce. Where are the children? Where do they go? How does that work?
So the divorces are held in Supreme Court, but the custody visitations, they can be addressed in family court. And that's the majority of the cases that I have. So the custody visitations that I have in family court have been proceeding. They cannot begin any new trials, but anything that was already in the midst of a trial can continue. And we have been having hearings virtually on those cases. If there's an emergency on a case, so for example, because of COVID, there are many mothers and fathers who have not seen their children pursuant to a court order. And so if you have an attorney, contact the attorney, have them file an emergency application before the judge that it's in front of, and they can adjourn it for a conference with the court attorney to see if it can be resolved. If not, then they'll have an emergency hearing.
Does there seem to be an issue that comes up in terms of one parent a little bit more concerned about COVID and sending children to school as opposed to virtual? Does this seem to come up as a matter of contention within the household?
It's huge because there's no precedent for this. So you have an order of visitation, you have an order by law that you are supposed to send children to school, but the schools and the laws are such that They are not going to impose that you send them to school as long as they attend virtually. But amongst the family, amongst mom and dad, one person may say they need to go out, they need to socialize, they need those 2 days or whatever in school. But another parent may say, no, I'm not putting my child at risk. I want them to do virtual. But there's no right or wrong. Unfortunately, the courts are not happy about addressing that specific of an issue.
All right, Janette, any final tips? We don't have too much time. Someone's watching right now. They're having an issue inside their house. They're scared. And what do? They come to see you. They need their family court attorney. What do you tell them?
So if I'm already their attorney, then I make whatever appropriate application in court before the judge that it's already assigned to. If I'm being contacted by a new client, then I will try to work with that new client to have a basis for an emergency application, which is really the only type of applications they're accepting and hearing now.
And most importantly, where do we find you?
So you can email me at jcortesgomez, ESQ@gmail.com, or call the office 718-402-2245.
Janette, always great to see you. Thanks for being here. And of course, say hello to the family for me, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back with more Today's Verdict right after this. All right, we're back with one of my favorite people. I would probably say pretty much one of everyone's favorite people, and that is Dan Cassidy, a fantastic lawyer, just a good all-around great guy and a friend to the show. Dan, thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty honored. I think this is number 3 for me.
Listen, it's like hosting Saturday Night Live. You know, you get a jacket with 5. You're one of our favorite people. And I think there's a reason the administrative judge picked you to be the first person to try a case during the pandemic, a full jury trial. And that's because you're very good at what you do. And everybody likes to see you in a courtroom. So just walk us through it. Tell us, how did it even come about? How did you get the call from the manager to come into the game?
It really was, and as you well know, David, particularly for people like us who really, our day-to-day existence is in that courthouse. It's our lifeblood. Forget financially, that's what we do, that's what we love. Where I see most of my friends. It's been so hard being out. So I got the call from Justice Gonzalez, who's just everybody who knows. She's the administrative judge for the 12th Judicial District, which is the County of the Bronx. She's an elected Supreme Court justice for you great people of the Bronx, and she's appointed as the administrative judge. So she runs things. She gave me a call. She was looking to try to test the protocols that she has exhaustingly put in place to try to guarantee not just the safety of the clerks and the attorneys, but most importantly of the jurors. And I found a case with an adversary, a gentleman by the name of Peter Culp. I want to shout him out because he's not just a good trial lawyer, but a wonderful guy to work with, and helped all of us put together what ended up being a safe and interesting experience.
Well, let me ask you a question. You get in there, even picking a jury, how does that work? I mean, they're behind glass. I mean, how do you even get to speak to them? How did that work?
Yeah, it was really, I know I've described it to you in our, off the record text conversations as being surreal. I've been doing this almost 30 years. So we go in, we have to pass a temperature check, as did everyone who entered the building. Everyone was pre-screened. The jurors were brought up from the jury room 2 at a time so they could socially distance in the elevator. Escorted into the biggest courtroom we have in the building, where they film a lot of Billions and Blue Bloods and The Irishman and things like that. And instead of being in the jury box, the jurors were seated 4 seats apart in the audience behind the attorney.
Really?
And every other row. So as you can imagine, the people in the last row were probably about 65 feet away from us. And while we had microphones and I believe they could hear us, it was very difficult to hear them, because one of the safety considerations was that masks were to remain on at all times, regardless of whether you were speaking or not. So It was a challenge. It was a
So
challenge.
you had a mask on during the entire trial.
The entire time. And I will say, and again, I'm a trial lawyer. It's what I do. There were challenges to doing this job to the best of my ability under these circumstances, but that's because Justice Gonzalez and the court system absolutely put safety of the jurors first. It was the overriding concern of the entire system and of Justice Gonzalez.
Which is a question I really want to ask you. The jurors just being asked to come in during a pandemic, did they give a little bit of an attitude? Were they excited? What was it like for them?
I think a couple were probably happy to get out of the house, to be honest with you, as was I. But I've been here in the Bronx for a long time. I know how great our citizens of the Bronx are. I know how great our jurors are. But I was very, very happily surprised how comfortable they were with the protocols that were put in place to guarantee their safety. Generally, I did not get pushback from people about being there. I really didn't.
All right, so let's say this works, and it seems to be working. You got the biggest courtroom in the building usually, and you were able to put the jurors where they needed to be. Unfortunately, not all the courtrooms in the Bronx County are as big. Do you think this is can this work out for us for the next, 3 to 6 months?
It can work on a limited basis.
Limited basis. Okay.
It can do a couple of trials at once, but no more than that, because they're so concerned about the various distancing protocols, the sanitizing protocols. I can't see more than 2 or 3 trials going on at any one time. I really think, I don't know if we'll ever get back to what we were before the pandemic, but we're not even going to get close until we have some sort of vaccine.
Listen, Dan, a lot of attorneys are going to want to reach out to you. You're the trial guy. You always have been. Where do they find you if they need to start getting you in the courtroom for them?
Well, my email is as you know, David, many of us are not in the office very often. I came in today because I wanted to look good for you, and I didn't want you to hear my dogs. Although, as I told you, I will not put the bow tie on unless I'm in that building, because that's
okay. I put a tie on for you today, Dad.
It's D Cassidy at DanielDCassidy.com.
All right.
And my office number is 718-293-3046.
All right, Daniel Cassidy, slowly becoming our favorite guest in today's verdict. Dan, stay safe. Say hello to everybody for us, and hopefully I'll see you in person sometime soon.
All right, best to you and the family as well, David. Thank you very much.
All right, well, that's all that we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you have a topic or an issue that you'd like me to discuss, just email me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org. Until we see you again, always remember, know your issues, know your rights, reach a verdict. We'll see you next time.